Hey y'all, I had a lot of questions about this taper jig. So I'm going to do a quick breakdown of the components of it, a little bit about their features, how it works, how I've used it, and maybe some other things that it could be used for, what I like, what I don't like, etc. So I'll try to make this fairly quick. But the first thing I'm going to do is take it apart. So here is the jig from a little bit different angle. You can see it from above here. I've already removed this. This is a 6-inch hold down clamp. There are two of those on there. So then this is what I call the guide piece. So the guide piece lifts off of here. That is just held on with a couple of star knobs. And then I've got a groove that is routed through the middle of this to allow these hold down clamps to move, but it also pivots on the two T-track bolts so that you can change the angle, okay? So we'll move that out of the way. All of this is made out of 3/4 pre-finished plywood. I chose pre-finished plywood because it's nice and slick and it slides really well on the table saw. So then I've got two pieces of T-track. I put a couple of pieces of I think it's like 80 or maybe 120 grit sandpaper on here, just enough to kind of help hold my piece in place so that it's not sliding while I get the guide piece arranged where I want it and get it all clamped down and everything. These are just regular 1/4-inch bolts that fit into that T-track. This is a 10-inch wide piece, and I did 10-inch wide with no miter bars on the bottom side because I wanted to be able to use it from either side of the blade. And so I just set my fence at 10 inches. I know this is going to be right up against that blade. I know that when I'm setting my piece on here, I can align my cut marks or my pencil marks right with the edge of the base piece itself. And I know that's where my angle is going to be. I don't have any issues with tear out on this. It makes real nice clean cuts. And yeah, it works fantastic. It's easy to break down. The one thing that I would change is there is some flex. When you're tightening these clamps up, it tends to pull up this piece. And I worry that that's going to skew my angle a little bit. So I think I may reinforce this at some point. Other than that, I really love this thing. You'll notice that I've made some cuts here and I've made a little bit of notch here. That's just so that I can get, you know, a stronger angle there and still fit between the blade and the fence. I do still use my riving knife with this. I have not had any issue with that. I don't use my dust collection hood. So mostly I will use this to cut tapers on thin stock like this. So, you know, for example, this is one of the backrest pieces for the chair that I'm working on, the Gordon. And what I'll do is I'll mark off that line. I'll mark it on both sides and make sure that I draw out, like if I've got a complex angle like this, I'll draw that out all the way to the edge of the piece so I know exactly where I'm going on this. If I'm doing multiple of them, once I get it aligned where I want to cut it, I'll put a mark at the top and a mark at the bottom right directly on this piece. I'll just use pencil and mark it in. It's really easy to clean that off later. And then I can batch these out. So as long as I know that these pieces are always the same length, they're already cut to length, I can align that top, I can align that bottom, and I can cut, you know, in this case I did 6 of them. I can cut that angle for all 6, and then I'll line up this angle and come back and cut all 6 of those. That way you've got pieces that all 6 pieces match exactly, and they've got, you know, nice straight lines for those angles. The other thing that I'll use this for, and I haven't done a lot of this, but I'll use it this way every now and then. I'll flip this around so that I've got the straight side, the mostly straight side, on the side facing the blade. And say I've got a piece like this lovely spalted piece of cedar, and I know I've got sort of a straight edge on one side, but maybe it's not perfectly straight. Then I can put this on the jig, line up this straight edge against there, cut a straight side, and then come back and cut the other side straight. Now I could do that on the joiner too, but if I'm just doing one piece and I don't want to drag the joiner out, and I know that this has got a little bit of a curve to it, a little bit of a bow, or just, you know, high spot, low spot, whatever, then I'll do that when I'll kind of use this like a little jointer sled. This is to show how you can use the taper jig to create a straight edge on a board that does not have either edge straight. So instead of just running it through against your table saw fence, if you already had a straight edge, you can use this to basically joint one edge. So what I've done is taken the fence off of the taper jig, and now I've clamped the piece directly down, the piece that I want to cut directly down to the sled. Because the sled doesn't have a miter bar on it, I can then adjust my fence on my table saw to wherever I need it, and that's where that's going to run up against. This is one of the advantages to not having a miter bar on here, is you can really move that sled around anywhere you want. And now you see I've cut a straight edge, and I'm pulling it up, and I'm going to check this with a rule, and it's nice and straight. Here I'm taking a piece of elm that was resawn, and I've folded the two pieces back on top of each other, and I'm cleaning up one straight edge. I used the whole guide piece of the taper jig to clamp this down. The pieces were small enough that they fit in between the T-tracks, so I could use that whole guide piece as one long clamp. And when I pull these out, I'll flip them over, and you'll see now I have a book matched set.